Okay, everyone, let's see if we can change some minds tonight. Matt, I would like you to start us off with an update on the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan.
So the ultimate update, guys, is going to be the end part, which is the most important aspect of this, because producer Shai here is going to give us actual tangible things we can do to help the situation if we should so choose, and we should. That being said, I'll be honest, I'm not sure, like, if I was like Dictator Matt right now, I'm not sure what the answer is right now. But to kind of give you what I think is an important, I'll just go through a really brief timeline and take us to where we stand today. All right. And this is really brief, really general. Of course, you can kind of pick this apart and add nuance to it, but I'm gonna go through a quick timeline as I know it. And I repeat, as I know it, because the reality is, like, I'm not from Afghanistan, right? I haven't lived that myself. So I've taken this from listening to people from Afghanistan, what I think are reputable media, listening to soldiers who've been there. And so take this for what it is, right? But once upon a time, we'll say about 1980, we know that the Soviet Union tried to go into Afghanistan and shape things there, right? In that process, we know the United States of America, going through the Cold War with the Soviet Union, the aftermath of World War II, was always at that position, right? Always trying to push back against that. Always trying to push back against Soviet, communist, socialist influence on any population, basically runs against capitalism. So while the Soviets were invading Afghanistan, the United States government, the Saudi government, and the Pakistan government helped fund, train, and arm what we would call various mujahideen groups, right? The Mujahideen of Afghanistan, not to be confused with the Mujahideen of Iran, right? Two different groups. So the Mujahideen of Afghanistan are various groups from various different areas, you know, factions, lands in Afghanistan that came together to fight the Soviets. In the aftermath of removing the Soviets from their land, there was a civil war, right? Some of the groups came together to form what was a Afghan national government in a sense, and a lot of groups didn't like that. They wanted power for themselves, things like that. So there was a civil war. Around 1994 is when the Taliban, as we know them, show up. The Taliban comes from a few different mujahideen groups, which again, the United States of America, Saudi Arabia, and mainly Pakistan helped fund, arm, and train. All right, so we helped create some of these groups indirectly at minimum. By 1996, the Taliban had taken control of Afghanistan, okay, and they had a run atop that country from 96 to 2001. And at their peak, they had about 90% control of the country. All right. There was a northern kind of region with various kind of warlords and stuff, different mujahideen groups themselves, things like that, who resisted the Taliban. Most of those regions fell except for one, which was led by Ahmad Shah Massoud. Okay. And a really weird kind of twist of fate type of thing. I'm not sure if these are connected or not. He was actually assassinated by Al-Qaeda, which was, of course, given safe haven by the Taliban, 2 days before 9/11. So on September 9th, 2001, he was assassinated. His significance is he was the last region to hold out within the Taliban. And in his region, there were things like women's rights to some extent, right? He believed that women just have to be fully covered, education, things like that. His war record was much better than the Taliban and different groups like that. So he's actually an Afghan hero. They have a day dedicated to him. He's a hero. Like, this is a good man. Like, this is someone who fought an empire, right? Was a part of the Civil War, tried to help his people. He really gave a fuck about Afghanistan. Now, that's an important aspect right there. The United States of America, when they go into these places, they don't prop up leadership that gives a fuck about the Afghan people. They prop up leadership that gives a fuck about American interests as it relates to resources, who are willing to be power brokers for what we want to do. So when people are saying, oh, the Afghan government folded, they don't care, he ran away. This man didn't care about the Afghan people. He cared about lining his pockets. He saw an opportunity to take advantage, and he did. We don't support the people who actually support the country. And I'll go back to my own personal experience. The United States of America can talk a great talk about freedom, democracy, and things of that nature, but we don't support the people pushing for freedom in Iran, right? The actual resistance, we've labeled them terrorists, things like that at various points, and they had to sue and fight for their freedom and to get off that list. We've supported bad entities who push our interests, all right? So long story short, the reality of Afghanistan is for the last 20 years, we weren't there for the right reasons. We were there to take out people who harmed us because Afghanistan had become a hotbed for terrorist training and things like that, right? The Taliban had from those 5 years span, right? They allowed Al-Qaeda, different groups in there to kind of train things like that. But we were there to take out terrorists who harmed us that we helped create, right? And to exploit natural resources. So where we stand today, after that 20-year span, it's not fair to say we did nothing there. Like the soldiers, they did good work actually. And you know me, I'm not pro-military, I'm not pro-soldier, which are two different things. Because if you look at the class issues and the systemic issues, the military targets socioeconomic, like people who are in like lower positions and like that within our economy, right? So like they're taken advantage of too. But the reality is soldiers actually did a good thing in this scenario. While I'll rail against U.S. imperialism is not worse than the Taliban. It might have created the Taliban, so like we can have that kind of nuanced debate about what's worse. But when it comes to the direct impact of like United States forces and like the United States government versus the Taliban themselves, it's not the same. Like these are some of the worst people you will ever come across in life. And the reality is, if we withdraw, and we have, so like I'm not like it is what it is. You allow the Taliban to descend upon 30 million people. Whatever your take is on economies, on foreign policy, on the world, on the US empire, the reality is our withdrawal allows the Taliban to descend on 30 million people. And where we stand today is the Taliban have taken control of every major city. They have control of major infrastructure. Every region but that one up north we talked about earlier has been taken over by the Taliban. And what I find interesting is I think the latest news coming out of Afghanistan that's relevant is the son of Ahmed Shah Massoud has taken up leadership in that region and has said all they need is U.S. support and they will take up the fight against the Taliban. So the reality is the White House just said we still have 80,000 people to evacuate. 80,000 people still to evacuate. Like, let that sink in given what just happened in the last 8 months. We still have 80,000 people to evacuate. And this is not all on Joe Biden. We went from having tens of thousands, about 20,000 troops in that country to 2,500 because of Trump's negotiation with the Taliban that did not include the Afghan government. I repeat, the Trump administration negotiated with the Taliban without the Afghan government. And like, we wonder why they folded. They weren't a part of this negotiation. They expected support, and we withdrew support and allowed the Taliban to descend upon them. Because what happened once we negotiated with the Taliban, Shai? U.S. casualties at the hands of the Taliban dropped dramatically to the point where it was almost zero. What happened to the Afghan people? Casualties increased. The Afghan people are victims of the Taliban. The Afghan people are victims of the U.S. empire. The Afghan people are victims of the Soviet empire. So, I don't know. I could ramble on this forever because there's lots of like random shit I'm thinking about adding to it as I go, but I'll just kind of leave it there for now. I think I hit the main points.
Yeah, and it's not enough to just be like, let's make an opinion about this. Like, actually, American civilians can do something. And I think that it shouldn't be like a question of like, as Americans, what should we do? It should just be like, as humans, what can we do for this other group, for this other humans? Like, there's no reason to even bring the imaginary lines that create borders and countries into the equation. But 16 members of Congress penned a letter to President Biden stating, all that should matter now is our moral obligation and strategic interest to help those who helped us and to stand by the Afghans who bet their lives on the future we promised. And there's 435 people in Congress. So like the fact that only 16 people have signed on to this idea that like we have a moral obligation as humans to like not abandon the Afghan civilians is the sentiment that they all should have. So write and call your congressperson. Additionally, there are various organizations, among them working to help people fleeing Afghanistan is No One Left Behind. And at the end of this, I will provide links for all of these to make it easier for you guys to find. And they will be in the description as well. And this organization is helping people who are fleeing and people who are still over there and like their lives are in immediate danger. And then for the refugees who actually do make it to America, we have the Refugee Council USA. Sorry, guys, my slides are out of order there. So, and they're working with a lot of local organizations to place the recently displaced individuals and families from Afghanistan. And like one said organization is the Women for Afghan Women, which is a grassroots civil society organization dedicated to protecting and promoting the rights of disenfranchised Afghan women and girls in Afghanistan and here in New York. And I think it's important too to note that in addition to the Afghan civilians, that you should really check on your Afghanistan veteran friends and family right now. Because reports of veterans' helplines have increased since we pulled out of Afghanistan, but not only in America, but abroad as well.
On that note, just to jump in, guys, so this is why I have to separate U.S. imperialism from the soldiers on the ground. They really, like, here's the thing, whether we, like, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, take it for what it is, as I've gotten older, my views on 9/11 have really changed. When I saw that as a 9-year-old, it seared into my brain. That day seared into my brain. Adults' reactions, news reaction, like teachers' reactions, everything. I'm not going to forget that day in the aftermath of it, right? Because that's just a fundamental thing that happened in my childhood that has shaped part of my views on the world, right? As I've gotten older, more and more, that tragedy seems kind of like you get what you put out into the world. And that's a really ugly thing because the people who were harmed that day did not deserve that. They were innocent people who had nothing to do with all of this. But the people who harmed them, they've been harmed themselves by us. And again, I'm not saying that's right because it's not. Like, being hurt doesn't give you a right to go do things like that. But it should provide some level of understanding whether you like it or not, right? When you are an empire that goes and plays in people's backyards, someone's going to respond to that. Whether you like it or not, whether it's right or not, whether it's fair or not, that is the reality of life. If you push, someone's going to push back eventually. And so the soldiers who respond to that, right, we got hurt, we got attacked, they responded to that. They went into Afghanistan and they helped bring water to people. They helped bring electricity to people. They helped defend people against worse things. We also did bad things in Afghanistan. I'm not going to lie, right? War is not perfect. Even the most righteous war is going to have, collateral and negativity that results from the good side, even, we can call it. And I'm not saying we're the good side because, again, we probably shouldn't have been there to begin with, but that's irrelevant, right? Let's say we're the bad guys. Sometimes you land somewhere and you find worse guys. And that's what happened, man. The Taliban are worse than us. I don't really care what anyone says. I'll be the first to call us out for what we are. But the Taliban are an incredibly brutal, repressive, conservative, religious group that does not respect anything beyond their dogmatic way of life. So I don't think it's right to disparage soldiers who were actually fighting against what I would consider like evil, who in their minds were defending the country and really trying to bring something better to these people. Aim your negativity towards leadership, towards corporations, towards the businesses, and towards the government that facilitated this, lied to this, and profited off of this.